Welcome to Student-Led Conversations, where students lead real dialogues with thought leaders, shaping how we learn, work, and live. In today's episode, our student host sits down with pricing strategist and recovering CPA, Ron Baker, for a journey into the psychology of price, how story, design, and even choice itself guide what we feel and what we pay. From Starbucks menus and Black Friday frenzies to streaming tiers, coupons, and the mystery of movie theater popcorn, this episode pulls back the curtain on how brands turn perception into profit. Because value isn't math, it's emotion. And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Welcome to Student-Led Conversations. I'm your host, Harshita Multani, and in today's episode, we're diving into the fascinating world of pricing psychology, how brands use strategy, perception, and sometimes even emotion to influence the way that we buy things. I'm so excited for today's conversation with my lovely guest, Ron Baker. But before I get ahead of myself, Ron, would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Well, thanks, Harshita. I'm looking forward to this. I'm Ron Baker. I'm a recovering CPA. I started my career in a Big 8, so now you know what era to put me in. That's how you carbon date CPAs. Do they say Big 8, Big 6, 5, 4? And I've written 8 books. I'm a consultant. I don't practice anymore, but a lot of my work has focused on pricing, and specifically pricing in the professional firm space, where we're trying and have been trying for the last 30 some odd years to get firms to move away from hourly billing into a more sophisticated pricing strategies that you see in the rest of the corporate world, around the world actually, because pricing has actually moved into the C-suite. There's professional pricers. It's a whole profession. I can get an MBA in it. I can get a doctorate in it. And the field has really grown. So it's a wide open field, and there's a lot of skill in a lot of corporations around the world that have professional pricers on board, and they are responsible for the prices that we pay practically everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for introducing yourself. I have to say that I first got interested in today's topic after listening to one of your podcast episodes from your podcast, The Soul of Enterprise, on Starbucks and pricing. But honestly, after speaking with you in our prep episode and our prep call, I honestly just threw away the script and the topic that we had. And I realized that this was a topic that would be better for an organic conversation. So I think that would be the best way to approach this.
Beautiful. I love it. This is my favorite topic, so we can go anywhere you want.
Yeah, well, we'll see where it goes. So let's start with Starbucks, as I was mentioning before, since that's something that my generation connects with most of all, I think, today. And then we can see where the conversation takes us. So when talking about pricing psychology during our pre-call, Ron, you shared that pricing is more about psychology and storytelling than the economics and math aspect of it as well. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, there's a big debate in the professional pricing space about whether pricing is an art or it's a science. Now, obviously, there's math involved, and anytime you have math involved, you can easily be lured into the idea that it's science. And that's known, economists have a term for this, it's known as scientism. Just because we can put something into math doesn't make it scientific. Right? We're talking about human behavior here, and humans don't act like atoms or things that physicists studies. You know, whether or not a kid wakes up in the morning and drives to Kmart or Walmart is very difficult to predict, or whether your teenager is going to clean their room, right? I mean, humans are scamps, basically. We're very hard to predict. We're not... So you can't bring a scientific mind to it. So I firmly fall into the camp that pricing is an art, because all value is subjective. And that means that we can change our mind. As fast as you can change your mind, the value of things changes, no matter what it is, a good, a service, homes in the neighborhood. all these things can change pretty radically, very rapidly. And therefore, it's hard to predict pricing. You constantly just have to test it. And that's what we're seeing with pricing is, the professional pricers are out there constantly testing. And Starbucks is a great example because they have a very interesting menu with various options.
Yeah.
Notice they don't have dollar signs on their menu, which is interesting in and of itself. And the way that menu is structured, it's to get you to spend more and to actually enjoy your experience as well. And there's all sorts of ways they do that, and we can talk about that if you're interested. But yeah, they put a lot of thought into their menu construction.
Yeah, I recently saw in an article that Starbucks is actually they've been going towards more of the vibe of like a home and comfort vibe recently,
hmm hmm
especially with their whole Starbucks cafe environment. And they've seen that recent studies have shown that people have been using the mobile order feature. They've been using that as a way to just do it for convenience. And the CEO stated that he didn't want Starbucks to become something that's just a transactional kind of thing. And
hmm
he wanted something that's more a comfortable vibe, something that people would be more drawn to actually stay at, which could also describe why people purchase a lot more things when they're staying at the cafe in general too.
Yep.
I just thought that was really interesting when he pointed out that he wants to have Starbucks have a certain environment that's different to just getting something from like a mobile order and leaving.
Right. And if you go back to Starbucks founding, Howard
Hmm.
Schultz, the founder, was
Yeah.
inspired by sitting in, Italy cafes and just hanging out for hours like they do over there and drinking coffee and bringing that coffee experience to America. It was known as the third space. It was
Hmm.
the space you went to between home and office. And
Yeah.
it was originally designed to hang out. They had couches, they had comfortable chairs. They didn't have all this mobile app. Starbucks has commoditized itself. I'm really harsh on Starbucks because they've taken a world-class brand and they've commoditized it. They've aligned themselves with Dunkin' Donuts or McDonald's. In my mind, there is absolutely no difference going into a Starbucks or going into a Dunkin' Donuts. And that's
Hmm.
sad. And they did it to themselves. And partly because of the mobile app, but even before mobile apps, they started
Yeah.
doing it.
Hmm.
And it's tragic. It's absolutely tragic. And if this new CEO, I know comes from Chipotle, if he can reverse that, more power to him. But I'm very skeptical because right now I view Starbucks, Dunkin' Donuts, and McDonald's coffee. It's all the same to me. There's no distinction anymore in my mind. Starbucks, it doesn't have the cachet of the brand that it once did. And
Yeah.
that's sad.
Hmm. I once saw in another article that said that Starbucks is actually their prices are 25% higher than other brands like Dunkin' Donuts and other brands like Apple and how they advertise things. But it's interesting to say that Starbucks is actually they're just using their advertisements as a way to not in a way to I would say lessen the prices, but just to draw people in and draw the right audience in that would spend that money and that would be willing to actually spend that money that they're having for their prices.
Yeah. I think they're trying to recapture that third way that, hey, come here and hang out. We're going to put the couches back and the comfortable chairs back. And I mean, you walk into a lot of Starbucks and they're just mobile app pickups.
Hmm.
You just walk in, pick up and walk out.
Yeah.
And when you're trying to be in there reading a book or meeting with friends or maybe even doing some work, you're bumping into people that are just, flooding in.
Yeah.
It's absolutely crazy. Starbucks was never like that. Starbucks was something unique that you went to hang out, and they just destroyed themselves. I mean, and I think part of it is just, growth for the sake of growth. They just wanted to grow, and they were quite successful. I mean, Starbucks has, I forget how many locations, but it's quite a lot around the world.
Hmm.
And, growth comes at a cost. Growth for growth's sake is the ideology of the cancer cell, not the ideology of a profitable, sustainable business. Porsche, for example, Porsche has never been interested in growing. And from a marketing perspective, here's a great line that almost every CEO of Porsche has repeated at some point. Two Porsches on the same street is a
Yeah.
tragedy. Now, think about that. That's the antithesis of growth mindset,
Yeah.
right? Grow, just sell more, sell more, sell more. No. We have a very exclusive customer base. We know a lot about them. We know what they value, and we're not going to flood the market with Porsches. That's not the goal. And I think Starbucks lost track of that.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned earlier in your conversation that Starbucks doesn't have the dollar sign in their menus when it comes to their pricing. Why do you think that's the case? I think that would be a really interesting way to approach the conversation.
Yeah, this is a field known as menu engineering, and there's
Mm-hmm.
a whole lot of research behind this. There's a group in Cornell University that has a hospitality group, and they do a lot of research on menu design and
Mm-hmm.
whether or not you should have, charm pricing, like things ending in 99 cents or 95
Yeah.
cents, whether or not you should put dollar signs on things like that. And what they find is when you put a dollar sign on a menu, it automatically makes people think about currency. And you get into
Mm-hmm.
money mode and savings mode, where if there's no dollar sign, then you're not so much thinking about it. It's kind of like walking into a casino and playing with chips rather than cash. It's got
Mm-hmm.
that feeling of monopoly money. This isn't real, so I'll
Yeah.
just throw another chip in the thing. But that's why they're trying to get your mind off of you're spending your own money here.
Mm-hmm. What other businesses do you actually think do this menu engineering tactic?
Well, certainly restaurants are big on it. I mean, restaurants
Yeah.
have really taken this to an extreme where they know things like if they don't put dollar signs, you'll probably spend more. If they play music, especially classical music, that if it's
Mm.
a more higher end restaurant, that makes people feel wealthier and they'll spend more. They might splurge on a more expensive bottle of wine or something like that. There's a lot of behavioral psychology behind these types of things that
Mm-hmm.
tries to nudge you to spend more. Now, look, the effects could be pretty small. It could be anywhere from
Yeah.
1% to 5%. But, over a lot of transactions and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time, that begins to add up. So every little advantage you can get helps. And that's why they kind of do some of these things, like offering options. For example, Wendy's, when they came out with a double cheeseburger, and this was years ago. This was before I think double cheeseburgers were, as
Yeah.
ubiquitous as they are now. It didn't sell very well. And confronted with that problem as a pricer, you can say, well, maybe we should drop the price of the double
Yeah.
cheeseburger, or maybe we should increase the price of the regular cheeseburger so it's easier for people to trade up to the double. They didn't do either of those things. They added a triple cheeseburger to the menu.
Mm-hmm.
Now, from a psychology standpoint, they might not have sold any triple cheeseburgers. In fact, I think they sold very few. But what it allowed people to say to themselves is, well, look, I'm not a glutton. I didn't buy the triple. I only bought the
You got the
double.
double.
And the double started flying off the shelf at much higher rates than it did when they only had the two options. So
Mm-hmm.
it's those types of things that companies are constantly testing to see how the market reacts, how customers react.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the like gluttony part. People do sometimes try to make themselves feel better about purchasing fast food and sometimes like overpriced drinks like Starbucks with the excuse of, oh, it's the healthier option.
Right.
Like Starbucks said in a article that one of their target audiences is actually health conscious individuals, people who want to be healthier in their life because of the option that they have of removing sugar or offering substitutions like almond milk or soy milk, all of these
Right.
substitutions that would make the consumer feel better about their purchase. I think that would be I think that's a part of how they tie in the behavior psychology part into the conversation too.
Right. And they do tell a story that, one of the reasons they say they're more expensive is, well, we buy fair trade coffee. So
Hmm.
we're supporting the small farmer, and we pay a living wage and benefits to our baristas, our, I forget what they call them in Starbucks. Is it colleagues? They have a term for their team. But so that's part of their narrative too. And that's the interesting thing about pricing is it's a narrative. It's
Yeah.
more than a number. It's a narrative. If I think we talked about this on the pre-call. If I were to say to you, Harshita, I've got a Rolls Royce outside. I'll let you have it for $10,000.
Hmm.
You would instantly be skeptical.
Yeah.
What's wrong with it? Is the VIN scratched out? The vehicle
Yeah.
number scratched out because it's hot because you stole it. Because a $10,000 Rolls Royce doesn't fit the narrative of that brand.
Hmm.
Just like a $5 Apple computer or iPhone wouldn't fit the narrative of the Apple
Yeah.
brand. So price is a story and value, and it's value that determines the price that the customer is willing to pay. Value is a feeling. I'm talking to you from an Apple computer, and I think it was $3,500. Now,
Yeah.
I never did a spreadsheet analysis. I never did an ROI, return on investment. I never did a pros and cons of Apple versus all the other competitors I could have
Yeah.
bought for 20% of the cost, by the way. I just love Apple. I love the brand. I love what the company stands for. I like how they're innovative. I like how it works. I like how they stand behind their product. So if this caught on fire, I could just run it down to the Apple store and get a new one. Value's a feeling. And I think for the audience, especially accountants, we're so tied up with numbers and being objective, being able to carry things out to two decimal
Hmm.
places. Pricing doesn't work that way. Pricing is about feelings and psychology and storytelling and narratives. Sure, there's numbers in there, but it's that value is a feeling. And if my mind changes about Apple, I'm done. I'll go buy a Dell or an HP, and that could happen overnight. It hasn't happened in 40 years, but it might if they lose their innovative edge or I'm not happy with something they do. But the point is, I'm willing to pay a big premium for basically a feeling that, hey, I like this company, they stand behind their product, and it works well.
Hmm. Yeah, as you're talking about the emotion and perception part, that reminds me kind of Black Friday, which is coming up
Hmm.
in November. So many different companies, they don't up their prices, they reduce their prices and claim them to be huge sales and things that people can buy for really cheaper prices. How would you think that ties back into the perception of people being more willing to pay of just paying for more things because of that reduced price?
Right. And that's the theory, right? If you lower the price,
Yeah.
people will buy more. And look, for some brands, they're clearing out their inventory or whatever, Black
Hmm.
Friday. For some retailers, it's where they make the bulk of their profits.
Yeah.
I mean, think about the Halloween stores that pop up this time of year and then they're
Spirit
gone.
Halloween.
And then they're
Yeah.
gone the day after, right? And they make all their money in this 1 month period that they have to sell the costumes and all that. You know, the good brands don't do that because what Black Friday does is it teaches customers, hey, wait for the sale.
Yeah.
This is the drawback of like Macy's annual, May Day sale or whatever. You're actually training your customers to wait for the sale.
Yeah.
And you'll never see Apple do that. The only way Apple will lower its price is when new technology comes out. They'll
Hmm.
lower the price of the older technology, but eventually that's going to be removed from the shelves anyway. But
Yeah.
they don't train their customers. This is why hotels, if you were to walk into a Marriott in say some city like Boston or Chicago and walk up to the desk and say it's midnight and you say, do you have any rooms? And they say, yeah, we do. And you say, how much? And they say, oh, it's $399 a night or
Hmm.
$400 a night. And you say, I'll give you $200. I'll give you $200. How's that? And now a cost accountant or an accountant might say, take the money, because at least you'll get something rather than the room sitting empty, which you'll
Yeah.
never be able to sell again. But the pricers of Marriott say, no way.
Well, yeah.
There's actually a term for this. It's called the fade, when a customer tries to lowball the standard price. And the reason they do that is because if they gave you the room at half the price, they train you to keep doing that every time.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd never book a room in advance. You would just wait and walk up to the desk and try and get the room at half off. They figured that out a long time ago, and they just don't play that game. And that's why hotels are some of the best pricers in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you were saying about the hotels part, I think that kind of ties into their part of being their title of being kind of a high end or a high end thing to a place to attend. Like just like how different brands, different high end brands, like you could say Prada or Gucci, they never lower their prices. They always have that standard so that people who want to be at that level, they would want to meet that standard and they naturally they want to reach that standard to be able to afford things that are designer like Gucci or Prada and all of these brands. I would kind of say that Starbucks wants to do that in a way as well with the
Hmm.
way that they upscale their prices. Though a lot of their marketing, it ties into having that reputation of being high end, the corporate people, the people that have everything put together. They paint this image and this perception that people want to fit into more and something like that that people would want to be willing to pay that price that Starbucks offers because in their head that if they pay that price they would fit into that perception more.
Right, right, and that is definitely how Starbucks started. There was even something called the Starbucks effect that
Mm-hmm.
measured how much Starbucks lifted the price of coffee overall, and it was massive. Because think about, prior to Starbucks, you went to a diner or a breakfast place, you had a bottomless cup of coffee for 50 cents, 75 cents, and they'd keep filling it up for you. Starbucks came in and charged you $3, $4, and we said, great. But that's because also we got to hang out in this really cool place that was really comfortable. And just over time, they destroyed that. They really did.
Mm-hmm.
It's sad. Anyway.
Yeah, how would you think that all of this talk about price discrimination, all of these things tie into things in our everyday life, like everyday products?
Oh wow. Price discrimination, once you're aware of it, it's ubiquitous. It is embedded in practically everything.
Mm-hmm.
You can see this with children pricing, right? Children pay lesser price at movie theaters, amusement parks, even airplane flights. If you send a
Yeah.
child to fly somewhere and they're below a certain age, you're probably going to pay a lesser price than an adult would, even though, Harshita, even though it costs the airline more to fly a kid, an unaccompanied kid, because they have to guide them around the airport.
Oh.
Because
Mm-hmm.
the parents usually can't come to the gate anymore because of TSA and all of that. The airline has to go out and pick up the kid and meet the parents and then take the kid back and watch him on the flight and then help him get off and go to wherever he's going, who he's going to meet. So it has nothing to do with the cost. It has everything to do with, listen, kids have less money. They're more price sensitive. Families with large number of kids, can't afford to bring the whole family to Disney World if they had to pay adult prices for every kid. Think of a
Mm-hmm.
family with 4 or 5 kids going to Disney World paying adult prices. It
Yeah.
would, it would bankrupt them.
Yeah.
uh, so, so there's children pricing, but there's also senior discounts, right?
Yes.
I'll go to dinner with my dad at 4:30 at some restaurant, and he'll get a prime rib, he'll get a cup of coffee, he'll get dessert. I get the same prime rib. I don't get the dessert. I don't get the cup of coffee, and mine's $4 more. Now, here's the question. If the restaurant can make a profit off him at $4 less, what are they doing to me? Well, they're price discriminating against me because they know I'm not a senior
Mm-hmm.
and I value my time probably more than the money, whereas my dad's a senior. He's got more time than money, and therefore he gets a discount. That's the way they draw the seniors in. And the
Mm-hmm.
interesting thing about it is seniors are the last people that need a discount because they're some of the wealthiest members of society because they're older. Your grandpa's probably got more wealth than you do because he's been on the planet longer and he's worked
Yeah.
longer and he's accumulated more and he probably owns his home and all of that. But they still get discounts because businesses know that they have a lot of time on their hands to shop and patronize those businesses that will give them a senior discount.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is that it depends on what the people value or what they think that the specific audience that they're are targeting is. So we're playing on the values that they have rather than what exactly we should do with the pricing and what's fair.
But yeah, they're segmenting different customers.
Mm,
Coupons is another great everyday example of this. I'm standing in line with a box of Tide, laundry detergent, say $10, and somebody's in front of me and they have the same box of Tide, but they have a coupon. Now, they might have
yeah.
clipped that out of the paper. They might have searched the internet for the coupon, whatever. So they get $2 off or $3 off. I pay the full price. If the company can make a profit off them with that $3 discount, then they're
Mm-hmm.
just that $3 more I'm paying just goes straight to the bottom line, right into their pocket. But see, what they know is that not everybody clips coupons. And in order to get that $3 discount, you're going to have to take some of your time to search around the internet or the newspaper and clip those coupons.
Yeah.
Otherwise, Procter and Gamble would just lower the box of Tide by $3 and be done with it. Coupons are expensive to print, they're expensive to track. There's a lot of fraud in coupons, but they do it because it's a way to segment the customers between
Mm-hmm.
those who are really price sensitive and want to clip coupons and people like me that value my time more and just want to buy the thing and move on.
Yeah. I would say I think that's really interesting about like where you would buy something and you just want to move on from that and not really focus on the actual price in general too. Would you say that when we buy something for the brand name and how it makes us feel, is that the thing that's driving the price of then the price that the brand decides?
Brand is a big component of it for sure. If you think some of the brands you mentioned, like Prada and some of these higher end brands,
Yeah.
Hermès, right? I mean, they do none of those luxury brands do any discounting. Porsche, BMW, they just don't discount because if they did, they'd probably sell less,
Yes.
which is very counterintuitive to what you learn in economics about if you cut the price, you'll sell more. That's not always true. About 10 years ago in the northeastern part of the country, there was a lobster glut, and local restaurants said, well, we'll cut the price of lobster and then people will buy more and we'll have more lobster revenue. So they cut the price.
Yeah.
And what happened? Revenue actually went down because
Mm.
nobody trusts cheap lobster, right? I mean, it's like
Yeah.
buying gas station sushi. Be careful, right?
Yeah, you
It
never
just,
know.
yeah, I mean, lobster is kind of a luxury, even though it started out as like prison food, but it turned into a luxury, and you expect lobster to be expensive. Again, it doesn't fit the narrative, just like the $10,000 Rolls Royce doesn't fit
Yes.
the narrative.
Yeah, so much of the pricing actually it ties into the brand like you said because if you have a certain narrative that the brand has if you have let's say like we learn in class in school they teach you if something is cheaper that would mean that people will want to buy it more but it's so much more complex than that because if a certain brand has the image that their products are more expensive they wouldn't want to have something that's excessively cheaper than all of the other items because that would make their brand image seem more unreliable than the image that they already have for the audience and the people that trust them as a brand.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And, you know, if you look at like car companies, and there's lots of other companies that do this,
Yes.
like hotels,
Hmm.
but let's just stick with car companies for a minute. They all have luxury brands, or a lot of
Hmm.
them do. Think of Toyota, and then think of Lexus, their upscale market.
Yes.
When they move upscale or downscale, like I think it was Toyota who started, is it Scion, which is a lower priced brand. They didn't want to
Hmm.
offer that vehicle within the Toyota nameplate. They wanted to do it in a separate brand, and that's
Mm.
really smart marketing.
Yeah.
That's the level of sophistication that marketers have brought to pricing, but also branding, that I think is excellent. I mean, look at a hotel like a Marriott, where they have the Marriott Courtyards, but then they also have Ritz Carlton. These are
Yes.
completely separate brands under the same corporate umbrella, Marriott,
Yeah.
but different brands for different segments of the market. You see this in cosmetics. You see it in a lot of different companies, and that's usually very sophisticated marketing and branding.
Yeah, you said in our call that we had, in our prep call, that makeup brand specifically, if you go to a drugstore and if you go to a drugstore makeup product, you can find that same exact makeup product for a higher price if you go to a Sephora, let's say. So could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, when you look at um, Lancome and L'Oreal, and I forget the company. Geez, I'm blanking on the company's name. It's a French company that makes both of those brands.
L'Oreal?
Uh, uh, um, yeah, I guess it is L'Oreal. It is L'Oreal. So they have L'Oreal, which they sell in CVS and
Yes.
cheaper venues, and then they have the Lancome brand, which is more upscale, that they
Hmm.
sell in Neiman Marcus and Nordstrom and Sephora and all of that. And the interesting thing about it is it comes out of the same factory, it comes out of the same vat. There's
Yeah.
maybe 50 cents worth of chemicals that are different in the
Hmm.
Lancome brand. Now, the Lancome will have nicer packaging. It might contain a mirror, that you're
A
probably
little
not going to get,
extra. Yeah.
right, something like that. But it's the same stuff. So the cost
Yes.
difference is very, very small, but the price difference is like three, four times what it is in CVS. And so they just know that women who buy cosmetics in CVS are a different segment of the population, more price sensitive, more willing to shop, more willing to say no if it's too expensive than women who shop in Nordstrom or Sephora, because they're less price sensitive and care more about what they want, and they're going to be willing to pay a higher price. That's classic. That's fantastic marketing, branding, and pricing.
Yeah, it's a really interesting idea that one brand or one umbrella can expand to so many different markets. So I could be at a store purchasing something from L'Oreal and then I'll go to another store and purchase something from Lancome, but in reality I'm just purchasing the same brand of products essentially too.
Yep, and I do realize that people tell me, or women have told me, who are in this business. By the way, this was all developed by women. Some people think this is a conspiracy of men against women. A lot of women started cosmetic companies, right? And they came up with these strategies.
Hmm.
And they do say that Lancome has different color palettes than L'Oreal. So if you want a specific color you're looking for, well, then you're probably going to have to step up to Lancome. But the actual cost difference of the chemicals is very, very, very small.
Oh,
Okay.
we were mentioning that streaming platforms. We had in our prep call, we were mentioning streaming platforms. They have different packages. Spotify, Netflix, and YouTube. They all have different packages. So, for example, I was just thinking about this earlier the other day. YouTube could have YouTube has ads, and of course people make profit from ads, but they also offer YouTube Premium as a substitution for being able to skip the ads.
Right.
But when I was thinking about this, essentially you're going to be paying the person you're going to be paying the person either way in just different formats.
Hmm. Yeah, you mean the content developer on
Yes,
YouTube,
yes.
right? Right. Again, what they're trying to do is segment the market. They know that there's a group of people that want to subscribe to Disney Plus or Hulu or
Mm-hmm.
YouTube, whatever it is, but they don't have a lot of money, so they're going to have to put up with ads. So they're going to suck out your time, right? They're going to take your time. This is like clipping coupons. Whereas people that value time more than money are willing to pay a premium to avoid
Yeah,
those annoying ads. We should actually call them negatives, I think, sometimes rather than ads, because they add nothing, right? They're an annoyance, but you have to sit through them if you want the lower price. That's the
mm-hmm.
trade-off you make. So it's again classic price discrimination by segmenting the customer.
Yeah, like it's a lot about how you make the person play with the values that they have and value as a feeling being that way. If you think about it, Starbucks also does that with their sizing as well. When they offer the tall, venti, and grande, all of the sizing, it translates to being a big size. Like tall is, if you think about the word tall, you think of something that's a large size drink, but
Right,
that's the smallest size that they have.
right,
So that that sizing that they have is very unique to all the other different brands that just offer the classic small, medium, large. Because either way, whatever size you order from Starbucks, it'll make you feel like you're paying for a better value.
right. You're getting more. In fact, they they don't use small, medium, large, right? They change the language, which is also another thing that really smart companies do. Think of Walt Disney, Disney World. It's not an amusement park. It's a theme park, right?
Yeah.
They're not rides like a Ferris wheel or a loop de loop. They're adventures. When you
Yes.
see companies use their own language, that's really sophisticated. Apple, you never hear Apple say AI because
Yeah.
it's Apple Intelligence. That's smart branding when you control the language. And so yeah, that is another component of it too.
Can you think of any other big brands that we see like on a daily basis that do that?
Oh wow, Apple's great at it. Disney's great at it. They're probably Procter and Gamble, which is a phenomenal marketing company. I mean, they sell. If you think about it, some of their billion-dollar brands, which is head spinning when you think about a billion-dollar brand,
Yeah.
are toilet paper and paper towels.
Yeah.
Now, how do you differentiate toilet paper in the marketplace? Toilet paper is toilet paper, but it's really not, right? When you look at ads for toilet paper, it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating. And Procter and Gamble gets something like 40% of their revenue selling in Walmart, which is already a low price provider, right? Because that's
Yes.
part of their mission. But when you go in there and you look at the Procter and Gamble toilet paper, paper towel products, they're always more expensive than the competitors because they have great marketing.
Yeah, I feel like we can see this a lot in baby brands as well. If you think about things like diapers and all of that stuff, essentially they are the same product, but the way that they market things are so different to the point that you wouldn't, if you were so loyal to one brand, that you wouldn't want to be going to another brand and purchasing their products because you don't have that connection to that brand.
Exactly. The switching costs would be psychologically really high. Can I trust this brand? Is it going to be, the devil is usually better than the devil you don't when it comes to branding. So we end up buying the same TV, we end up buying the same car brand.
Yeah.
This is why car companies were so excited to get their cars into like driver's ed in high school because
Mm-hmm.
the theory was, well, if you learned how to drive on a Ford, and chances are you're going to buy a Ford when you're ready to buy your first car. And that turned out to be a pretty good bet. Same with Apple getting into schools early.
Yes. hmm Yeah, you mentioned the schools part. I think a part of it's also to do with the locations. I think different brands, they vary their prices depending on the locations that they have it at. Like if you go to like Disney, you can buy essentially the same product that you buy at Disney at another place, but Disney will upscale that price and they'll change that price. What would you say about that?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Location is a big deal. Whether
Yes.
whether or not you buy something in a Disney park, which is probably going to
Yes.
be priced premium, as opposed to say a Disney store in a mall, they're probably going to be different prices. Even Starbucks menus vary
Yes.
by location. If you go into a Starbucks in the financial district of a city, the prices are going to be more expensive than if you go to a
Yeah.
Starbucks located next to a college. Why? Because
Yes.
college kids are poorer than people that have jobs and are gainfully employed in the financial district of a city, and they're just going to be less price sensitive, more time sensitive. Whereas college kids, they they're more likely to say no to something if it's out of their price range.
hmm Could you explain more about why do you think that colleges would specifically want their prices to be lower in a way, and how that would play into the way that they arrange their menus and the way that the way that they frame their prices as well?
Yeah, you mean Starbucks next to colleges?
Yes,
Yeah,
Starbucks specifically.
yeah, chiefly because you're dealing with more price sensitive customers. That's why. So that, in other words, they have more substitutes.
Mm-hmm.
They're maybe willing to go to McDonald's more or Dunkin' Donuts. They're also willing to say no,
Yes.
and forego the $5 frappuccino or whatever. Where the person in the financial district, probably not. Right? They're going to splurge after lunch and buy the $6 drink or whatever because they want it. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and Starbucks knows that. And another great example of this is movie theater popcorn.
Mm.
I built a speaking career out of one question: why is movie theater popcorn so expensive? And I'm not just popcorn, but all the snacks, the drinks, the
Yes.
hot
All
dog,
of these things. Yes.
the candy. Why don't we see popcorn price wars? Why don't you have 50-cent night or 50-cent day popcorn and movie? They never do this. It's always at a premium price. Everything you buy at the snack bar. And so I'll ask you that question. Why do you think that is?
That's a really interesting idea because I honestly don't really think about it. When I go to a movie theater, it's just a thought in my head in the back that, oh, of course I'll have to buy the popcorn, but I don't
Popcorn.
mind it being expensive because I'm at a movie theater. I get the experience with the popcorn. I guess that movie theater popcorn in a way, it links that experience of being in a movie theater rather than having to just like getting popcorn from anywhere else and eating it. That movie theater popcorn, the bucket that you get it in, those nostalgic red and white stripes, all of that links back to the idea that I want to feel like I'm having a nostalgic movie experience, and it adds on to the fact that I want to watch the movie with a certain feeling.
Okay, Harshita, you're brilliant. That is not the answer I get from
Oh.
people around the world. You're absolutely right. The first company, I believe, that started selling popcorn in movie theaters was Nash and Company. And
Mm.
it became, and it was sometime in the 30s, kind of the golden age of Hollywood, the Wizard of Oz and,
Yeah.
all of these great movies.
Yes.
It became part of the experience. You go to a movie, you eat popcorn. I mean, the
Yeah.
hot butter, like you said, the tub that they put it in, the stripes, all of, yeah. But you know what most people say about why it's so expensive? Because it's a
Why?
captive audience.
Mm.
There's no competition. There's not like there's a second snack bar that you can go up that's trying to undercut the first one, right? And so they say, well, it's a monopoly. They have a monopoly. So of course they're going to gouge you on everything you buy. Now, other people might say, well, people that eat popcorn, they impose higher costs on the theater because now you got to clean up after them, right?
Hmm.
The sticky floor and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
you got to hire janitors to come in and clean the place out after every movie run. But that's not the reason. The reason is because if it was they have a captive audience, the theater owner could have paid toilets.
Yeah.
They have a captive audience there. But see, what the theater owners know that the rest of us probably don't know is that if they had paid toilets, what they made in the paid toilets, they'd probably lose at the box office because
Mm, that's true.
people don't want to pay for the toilet. So what
Yeah.
they're really doing is when people line up to see a movie, especially a very popular one, the theater owner doesn't know, looking at the line outside, who's going to come in and walk straight into the movie and who's going
Yeah.
to come in and go up to the snack bar and buy popcorn. And now he could go out or she could go out to the line and
Hmm.
ask people moving through, when you get in the theater, are you going to buy popcorn? And if they said yes, okay, well, then you get a $2 discount off your movie ticket. But they
Hmm.
don't do that because they know people would lie, right? And
Yeah.
so they have a dilemma. They don't know who's going to come in buy popcorn, who isn't. So they say, okay, we're going to keep the ticket price of the movie relatively low because we have fixed cost seats. We want to try and
Yes.
fill every seat we can. So we don't want to chase away kids with no money, families with large numbers of kids that are probably more price sensitive might buy just one bucket for the all 12 of them, right?
Yeah.
Rather than each one buy a bucket. And we just don't want to chase away
Yes.
the more price sensitive customer. But for those people that want to come in and have the great experience of eating the popcorn while watching the movie, there's where we're going to pull our profit from. So it's a way for the theater to segment the customers
Yeah.
because they don't know who's who when they're lined up outside. So, and the great thing about it, and Nash figured this out in the 30s, the
Hmm.
people that are willing to pay a higher price, you don't even have to identify them. They identify themselves because they walk up to
Yeah.
the snack counter. You see this with book publishing. You know, a hardcover book will cost
Yes.
$40, but a paperback might cost 10. Well, the publisher, the cost to produce both of those books is roughly the same. So
Hmm.
it's not a
Yeah.
cost difference that explains that price difference. What they know is when the new Harry Potter book comes out, that
Yeah.
people are going to rush down and buy it,
Yes.
self-identify as I've got to have this book now, and then they'll wait a year, maybe 2 years, depending on how good it sells, and then put out the paperback for all the
Yeah.
more cheaper customers that are willing to wait and get a cheaper price. But see, by then it's a different product, isn't it?
Yes.
Because when you
Yeah.
buy it in hardcover, you can have it on your coffee table. You can be really cool talking to your friends about the latest book by, well, whoever. But, in 2 years, nobody's going to care.
Yeah.
But some people are willing to wait, and some people don't even buy books. They go into they wait for it to get into the library.
Yeah.
So publishers they have this knowledge about how to segment the customers. Price discrimination is all about segmenting customers.
Yeah. And even when they have the paperback covers available, there are still going to be people who pay for those hardcover books too. Because, like we said earlier in our conversation, that exclusivity aspect of it, people who want a better experience than even reading. Because I've seen this debate online too, people who say that they prefer paperback books because you can fold them when you read them, the way you read them. And some people say that well, hardcover books, they're more convenient because if you spill something on them, you can just clean it up really easily. I think
Right.
that's a really interesting aspect to it that even when the cheaper option is available, there are still going to be people who want that other version of it.
The hardcover. And the very interesting thing about that whole debate is to the publisher, it's meaningless. I mean, it's icing on the cake to say, well, a hardcover is going to last longer. It's going to look cooler in my library. That's all incidental to the publisher. What the publisher
Yeah.
wants to know is, are you a huge fan of Harry Potter? And if you are, we know we can get the $40 from you. If you're cheaper or earn less money, then we know we can only get $10 out of you for a soft cover.
Yeah. hmm Well, I can't believe how time seemed to fly by. This has been a really incredible and insightful conversation, Ron, and I think I really can't thank you enough for this conversation and coming on today's show.
Oh,
I
thank you.
really feel, yeah, of course. I really feel that you've shared the stuff that you've shared today, especially for me and hopefully the others in the audience and our generation. It can help us better understand more about pricing psychology so that we can all use these really insightful things to apply to our own lives and think all these things so that we can maybe be less fooled by the really interesting pricing tricks that they use in our day-to-day lives.
Right.
So if people want to learn more about what you've talked about today, do you have any suggestions?
Yes, you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm Ron Baker on LinkedIn, and I'm one of the LinkedIn influencers. So I have well over 100 posts up there. A lot of them deal with pricing and these types of issues. And then also you can find me at thesoulofenterprise.com, which is the podcast I do with Ed Kless that you listen to, Harshita, when you listen to the Starbucks pricing
Yes.
episode. That episode, by the way, was number 233. It goes back to, I think it's March 19th, March 2019, when we did that
Yes.
show. We've done a lot of shows up there, over almost 600 shows, a lot of them to do with pricing and talking to economists about pricing. And so people can find me there. People can also find me at thresholdnow.com, which is the new company that Ed and I have formed to help usher professional firms into the transformation economy. And maybe I can come back and talk about that, because that's a new economic era that we're moving into. We're moving kind of out of the experience economy and moving into the transformation economy,
Yes.
where businesses are actually going to help customers change their identities, change something about them, whether it's weight loss, whether it's smoker to non-smoker, whatever it might be, but guiding these transformations. Businesses can do that, especially professional firms can do that. And so we're really excited about that. And then people can email me at ron@thresholdnow.com if they want further information. And I've written 8 books, so I've got books on pricing. The one I'd recommend that fits best with this conversation is Pricing on Purpose, which is kind of everything you ever wanted to know about pricing, but we're afraid to ask. And we talk about creating value in there and value in pricing and price discrimination and all of those topics with a lot of different examples from a lot of different industries. And so that's where you can learn more about that. But thank you so much for having me on. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. We would love to have you back. I think all the things that we talked about, we could really build on top of those things. We could have another really great conversation. So thank you so much for joining me on today's episode of Student-Led Conversations. And this has been one of the most eye-opening discussions I've had for a while now, and about all of the things about how much psychology and emotions play into something as simple as price tags and just pricing in general too. It's really everywhere if you think about it. And thank you to everyone listening. Be sure to check out Ron's podcast, The Soul of Enterprise, and the episode that inspired this conversation. We'll have it linked on the show's notes. And if you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe, share, and follow Student-Led Conversations. Until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep making an impact. See you next time.
Student-Led Conversations is brought to you by the Center for Accounting Transformation, empowering the next generation of leaders through student-focused programs that build confidence, leadership, and real-world connection. The Center for Accounting Transformation provides business professionals with a network for utilizing innovations that are ready for adoption, the training and resources necessary to apply those innovations, and an opportunity to engage the talent and community needed to further the pursuit of innovative accounting practices that drive responsible and mindful business performance. If you're a student, discover how you can lead, learn, and grow in the profession. If you're a professional, explore ways to give back, mentor, or sponsor student-driven initiatives. To learn more, please visit our website, www.we.improvetheworld.net and unlock the power of the accounting profession.